Didak has a brother. The rapists get arrested. The mystery of the hit and run is solved, and all hell breaks loose in a rain of bullets. Hello, entertainment enthusiasts. This is Ray, and this is the Fandom Realm. And today, I am recapping and reviewing Episode 7 and Episode 8, the finale of Season number 6 of Elite. As always, this is a spoiler review, so just be aware. Now, we're going to start off Episode 8 with Aerie showing up at the hospital after burning the car. She finds Patrick with his head in his hands, blood staining his sleeves. He knows it's bad for Yvonne and is concerned that he's never going to see him again. Of course, that is our opening, and that is a flash forward. In our current timeline, the gang shows up at Isa's club, where a big masquerade party is starting. When Patrick shows up, Mencia tells him how he's making a mistake being there, given that Yvonne is hurting and needs space. The pair know each other so well that they recognize one another even with their masks on, and Yvonne originally walks away. Ari ends up doing a pregnancy test in the club toilets. Why she chose there, we'll never know. And it turns out she's pregnant, and pregnant with Yvonne's baby. She's certainly in no mood to talk and decides to drink instead, shrugging off Sonia's suggestions to talk, given she saw the test after entering the cubicle after her. As for Raul, he shows up at the club and demands the cloakroom attendant find a bag he left behind. It's not true, and he's going to sneak in when the attendant leaves. So, Raul is going to end up getting a mask and begins looking around the club, desperate to find Sarah. Another surprise visitor comes in the form of Isa's mother, who immediately settles into the VIP section with a special guest. Isa is not happy with being left in the dark about family business affairs and ends up finding solace with Didak, who admits he too is left out of the family business when it is revealed that his brother Pal is her special guest. Isa's parents don't take kindly to Didak's presence, with Isa's mom throwing her weight around and eventually firing Didak after her and Pal had been talking and apparently having a disagreement in the VIP section. While all this is going on, rumors are abound of Isa's drug use, so Raul slips into her room and finds a whole bunch of drugs. He spikes Mencia's drink and watches as she passes out on the sofa, intent on cornering Sarah alone. Meanwhile, in the toilets, Raul calls Mencia a leech and pleads with Sarah for another chance. He doesn't want Mencia's manipulation to cost her what they have, and that's what he tells her. Raul pleads with Sarah, who opens up and admits he has no power over her anymore, and reveals that she kissed Mencia too, in order to sort of put it to Raul. Meanwhile, Yvonne and Patrick end up talking out their issues. However, Yvonne doesn't really take it seriously and admits he just wants to cuddle and have sex. He had gotten a room, a suite to take Patrick to, and of course Yvonne had already been snorting some drugs, and so he was high while all this was happening. And Patrick is in love with Yvonne and is upset, and he leaves the party heartbroken and desperate for this interaction to be more. Of course, Patrick was expecting to come up and talk out their feelings and talk out their differences. If you remember previous episodes, Yvonne had told Patrick that he blamed him for his father's death, and they've never gotten past that yet. They've never really talked about it. And so that's what Patrick was hoping to do. And, Yvonne was just wanting to be a guy and go hook up. Now, Ari, very drunk, leaves the club and decides to drive away. Rocio and Nico notice and tell Mencia, who's still groggy and struggling to stay conscious. Yvonne gets involved too, with Isa encouraging him to head out and speak to Patrick, admitting the truth about how he really feels. And she actually tells him to go take her limousine. In the wake of all this drama, Mencia grabs her car keys, and that's what leads us to the fateful hit and run. We then skip to after the accident, with Mencia in the driver's seat, presumably as the driver. She wakes up to find the windshield smashed, and the episode ends. All right, now we're off to episode 8, which is the season finale of Elite Season 6. And it starts with Mencia waking up to her phone buzzing. She has missed 10 calls. There's a smashed windscreen and a very hurt Yvonne in the road. Mencia panics and struggles to comprehend what happened. She picks up the phone, and it's Aerie, and starts crying, telling her she needs help and that she's the one who ran Yvonne over. Aerie hurries over and learns that her sister drove drugged up, although she's not in the position to take much of a moral high ground here, seeing that she'd been drinking and driving as well, and she thinks fast and tries to figure out how to handle this. Ari grabs a gasoline can and torches the car, intent on destroying the evidence. Mencia and Ari walk away from the burning wreckage, promising each other to keep quiet and not to reveal what's happened to a living soul. Ari enacts a plan to try and keep all of this under wraps, including telling Mencia to stay with Patrick at the hospital while she heads into prison. There, she speaks to Sebastian about everything that's occurred, including the hit and run and hiding the evidence. Sebastian tells her he can help keep all of this hidden, but only if she convinces her siblings to help testify in court. In the midst of this, Ari is also grappling with her pregnancy, but she's decided to abort the child, with Sonia offering some words of encouragement and support and suggesting she be there if she needs someone to hold her hand. Things are frosty between Isadora and Didak too. It turns out Didak's family are actually in the same field as Isa's, and he deduces that the reason he was fired is because his family are trying to expand out to Spain. Didak wants to show that he's loyal to Isa and doesn't want anything to mess up what they have. But for Isa, she's sick and tired of being messed with and has decided she's done with men. For now anyway, Didak regrets not telling the authorities about Isa's rape and tells Yavi he should have just done that from the very beginning. Meanwhile, we flash to Hugo, who is having trouble performing after being injected with the drugs in the one of the last episodes. He admits to Alex at the club that the last time he was properly aroused was actually in Ibiza during the horrific rape. He's also in no mood to forgive Yavi either, who now finds himself a loner. Naturally, Hugo decides to do the same thing to a poor girl at the club with Alex. Thankfully, while they're in the bedroom and undressed, police show up and catch them in the act. Some quick thinking saved another poor soul from suffering Isa's fate. Before Yavi is taken away too, he tells Isa to trust Didak and hopes she can trust men again after all of this. Turns out, Yavi had the recording from that night as well, and he has turned it over to the police, and that's why they showed up to arrest Hugo and Alex. At school, Nico seems to be having second thoughts about his surgery, but after helping Ari out with her abortion earlier in the episode, Sonia shows up to help Nico through his big change too. In the hospital, Patrick is convinced by Ari to disappear and give Yvonne some space when he wakes up. Patrick leaves an emotional voice message for Yvonne while Seb's big plan works as the siblings get their father out of prison and decide to leave Spain for a while. So, who was really driving the car? There's more to the story than initially meets the eye. It turns out Sarah actually stopped Mencia from driving that night and decided to take the wheel of Patrick's car. She took her eyes off the road, and when Mencia passes out, Sarah plows into Yvonne by accident. Sarah rings Raul and asks for help, and they decide to pin the whole event on Mencia. He wipes down the whole car, presumably with bleach, and the pair walks away. So Raul now has control and leverage over Sarah, while Yvonne wakes up in the hospital with his first word being Patrick. As for the kids, they all drive away while another car races up to the school as Isa and Didak share a moment while his brother Pal looks on. That car seems to be some bad guys because as it approaches, an arm protrudes from the back window, showing off a gun that starts to fire wildly in their direction. And with that, Season 6 of Elite comes to a close. All right, everyone, now that we're done with the recap, I do want to throw some thoughts and reactions out there to episodes 7 and 8, and I'm not separating these. What I'm going to do is I want to talk generally about the characters and the overall separate storylines, and so that's what I'm going to put in this section mostly. So first storyline and set of characters basically has to do with Ari, and basically her getting pregnant, her being a drunk, and sort of her being the parent of the group. And I really think they missed an opportunity with Ari this season. I thought she's your typical bad girl type character, and she just didn't really do anything. She was sort of whiny and in the background the whole season. And I really didn't like the fact that everything she did was sort of attributed back to alcohol, even when she went and got plastered in then had her hookup with Yvonne where she got pregnant. And then just the fact that she is drinking so heavily afterwards. I know she apparently went in and had an abortion and was probably thinking of that while she was drinking in some of those instances. But her whole storyline, I felt they could have really taken it to a different level, especially with her hooking up with Yvonne when Yvonne is her brother's boyfriend. I thought they really could have written that story in an even better way that would have really taken the quality of the story to a higher level. Also with her and Nico, I really liked Nico at the start of the season, but turning him into basically a drug dealer just didn't do it for me. I will say they are very creative. I don't know of any other stories out there where a person has decided to sell drugs in order to fund a trans surgery. So, they do have that for them. Very creative type story there, a different way to do it. Never thought that's what was going to happen. So that wasn't really the bad part. Although, people are going to figure out he's selling drugs. And that's one of the big things for this season is nothing's coming back to haunt any of the good guys. And that can cause issues in shows because there's no boundaries for them. When the good guys can do anything and get away with it, there's no boundaries for them. And I think that's sort of, again, something this season that we have been missing. That brings me into the whole storyline with Issa and her rape and Didak and then her getting even. Of course, the whole rape storyline I thought was well done up until a point, and sort of feelings and Issa and her feelings and what was going on and around her with her friends, and then Didak, who was getting involved and didn't really believe her because Yavi was his friend of many, many years, a lot longer than Issa, but then he realizes that everything she says is true. And I really liked the growing relationship between Isadora and Didak, and so that is something I was very happy with. Now I will, and I mentioned this in other episodes, I'm not sure I like the type of revenge that she took. Now the tattoos, that was something that I guess she was able to get away with. They got drugged, they didn't know who did it. They did the tattoos, nobody knew. Okay, but then she starts getting drugs from Nico that are basically going to chemically castrate Hugo. And I'm not sure this isn't taking things a little bit far. And I know the pain of having the situation with the rape is very heavy, but as I pointed out before, Issa is very close to her friends, and they're very good friends. And it just seems to me, would she really put her friends at risk to get even? And if Hugo's in jail and they find that he's been drugged, and they can trace that drug back to Nico's dad, that can get Nico's dad in trouble. That can get Nico in trouble. Nico, being a drug dealer at school, probably going to get kicked out. And so I'm just a little bit questioning that, although I thought the actress playing Isadora did a great job all season long. And that storyline potentially could be very positive and uplifting, hopefully, for anyone who needs it. Next storyline, Raul, Sarah, and Mencia. And I'll just be quite honest with you here. I thought this was a wasted storyline the entire season, and partially because we had basically a domestic abuse storyline and the rape storyline going on currently, and I don't think the domestic abuse storyline with Raul and Sarah ever really was able to get a good footing. It does identify domestic abuse for us. It does sort of show you what some of the problems are and how hard it is to break out of that type of situation, but I think it was always overshadowed by the rape storyline. And so I think maybe if they would have introduced those characters in another season and done that storyline, that it may have been done better. Now, the last real storyline I'm going to talk about, of course, to me is the most important, and that was the storyline between Patrick and Yvonne, and to some extent, Patrick's dad. The big story that I was wanting to see this season was Patrick and Yvonne. After what they set up last season, I thought they did a very good job of matching the two of them up. I thought they had pretty good chemistry, and so I was looking forward to a very interesting season. Okay, when they were on screen together, they had very good chemistry. They were very intimate with each other, and so I was big looking forward to that, and them being together. But for most of the season, they were not together. They never had any type of intimate scenes together. They did have some kissing scenes, but they weren't really all that intimate. Somebody was drinking or on drugs at the time. Things were just always awkward between. And one of the things that, knowing what I do now, that makes me very mad, because apparently, if you read in on the internet and in some articles that are out there, apparently the actor playing Patrick is not coming back next season, which is very disappointing. I really like him as an actor. And so it seems like they're just going to leave another storyline sort of out there in the open. Sort of like basically killing Samuel, but not killing Samuel, and then killing him when the season started for good. So I don't think we're ever going to get those questions answered. We're not going to see that Patrick and Yvonne relationship that we wanted to see this season, because the actor's not coming back, or apparently is not coming back. Maybe something changes. And we do know there is a 7th season, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. So, of course, with everything that happened with Yvonne and his father, I really wanted to see the two of them really talk it out and get over the hatred that sort of Patrick, or the hatred that Yvonne was having, and the feelings Yvonne was having against Patrick, because he was blaming him for his father's death, which, of course, in the end, Yvonne isn't going to, he's just hurt. He's lost his dad. It's not something he probably really believes, but they need to work it out. And I'm just afraid we're not going to see that. Now, I'm totally hopeful Patrick's going to be back, at least for a little while in the last season. But if they don't, I'll be very disappointed, because I don't think this storyline got anywhere close to how good it could have been. Now, overall, I do think this season was something of a disappointment. I don't think we ever got the best of what Elite could have done this season. It's sort of like the writers forgot what show they were writing. I've always, when people ask me about Elite, the way I describe it to them is basically it's an American soap opera based in a Spanish boarding school, but it has all the sex and nudity that American soap operas never did. And with that, we never saw that this season. That sort of edginess to what was happening. And, the idea that, this is a little naughty what we're watching here. We never got to that this season. We never got close to that this season. And so with that, I'm really disappointed with this season. It was not a terrible season. I thought last season was much worse. But with that, hopefully next season will be even better, and I hope to do a review for next season. We'll just see how things happen. Now, with that, everybody, I do want to hand out some grades for this 7th and 8th episode. I'm actually going to give them a combined B. These were not 2 episodes that were really bad or anything like that. I quite like them, but with that, I'm going to give the overall season an actual C. It is so very average that it's really disappointing to me. But I think C is fair. I would give last season a C- or D+, and so it is better than last season. I just look at everything they could have done with this season of Elite, and they just didn't. It's just sort of like they dropped the ball. They got in the red zone and couldn't score the touchdown. So with that, I hope everyone has enjoyed the recaps and reviews of Elite. The first 4 seasons were some of my favorite television out there. And with that, I hope you all will choose some other shows to watch with me. We have a couple that aren't getting the views that I thought they would in The Last of Us and Wednesday. So take a look. We've got lots of videos. Take a look and find some other things you like. We're getting ready to go into some more shows in the next week. And please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. And I'll see you next time on the Fandom Realm.